The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stood silent as Admiral Jack Morrison finished his final words to the gathered alien leaders. His voice had been calm and steady as he spoke into the communication device that sent his message across thousands of star systems. The holographic image of the human admiral flickered once and then disappeared completely, leaving only an empty space where he had stood moments before. Council Chairman Vex Tar slowly rose from his massive crystal chair. His four purple eyes looked around the circular chamber where representatives from 47 different alien species sat in shocked silence. For 300 years, this council had ruled over every inhabited world in their part of the galaxy. They made all the important decisions, and every species followed their orders without question. Every species except one had always accepted their place in the galactic order. The humans had just broken that tradition in a way that no one had expected. Admiral Morrison had not asked for permission or begged for mercy. He had simply told the council that humanity was leaving. All of them. Every human in every corner of galactic space would return to their home worlds within the next 6 months. The Terran withdrawal, as Morrison had called it, would begin immediately. Defense Minister Krondal, a massive creature with gray skin and razor-sharp teeth, slammed his clawed hand on the metal table in front of him. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. "They cannot simply leave," he growled in his deep voice. "The Terran Accords bind them to serve the Council for as long as we require their services." Council member Thaisara, a snake-like being with shimmering green scales, hissed her agreement through the universal translator device. "The humans signed contracts that give us the right to use their labor force wherever we need them," she said. "They have no legal right to abandon their duties." But Chairman Vex Tar knew that legal documents would not stop what was already happening. As the council members argued among themselves, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Human workers at mining stations were packing their belongings and walking away from their jobs. Human engineers who maintained the power systems on space stations were shutting down their equipment and heading to transport ships. Human farmers who grew food on agricultural worlds were leaving their fields and returning to their own territories. For 3 centuries, the Galactic Council had treated humans like useful tools rather than intelligent beings. When humans first made contact with galactic civilization, they had seemed weak and primitive compared to the advanced alien species. Their bodies were fragile and their lifespans were short. They had no natural weapons like claws or venomous bites. They could not survive in extreme temperatures or breathe different kinds of atmosphere without special equipment. What humans did have was an unusual willingness to work hard and learn quickly. They volunteered for dangerous jobs that other species avoided. They went to mining stations in asteroid fields where radiation levels would kill most aliens. They maintained equipment in the deep vacuum of space where one small mistake meant death. They grew food on hostile worlds where nothing else could survive. The Council had been happy to let humans do this dangerous work. It kept the other species safe and comfortable while still getting the resources they needed. In return, humans received basic supplies and permission to live in galactic territory. The Council considered this arrangement to be generous since humans contributed so little to galactic civilization compared to the more advanced species. Human representatives had come before the Council many times over the years to request better treatment for their people. They asked for voting rights in council decisions. They wanted fair payment for their dangerous work. They requested permission to build their own cities and govern their own affairs. Each time, the council had refused these requests. Humans were useful workers, but they were not equals to the great civilizations that ruled the galaxy. The final request had come just 6 months ago. A human delegation led by Admiral Morrison had asked the council to grant humanity full membership, status with voting rights equal to their contributions to galactic society. They had presented detailed records showing that humans maintained 60% of the critical infrastructure that kept galactic civilization functioning. They operated the mining equipment that provided raw materials for every major construction project. They grew the food that fed billions of aliens across hundreds of worlds. The Council had rejected this request without serious consideration. Instead, they offered to create a new position called Observer Status that would allow one human representative to attend Council meetings but not vote on any decisions. The human delegation had left the chamber quietly that day, but Chairman Vextar had noticed something different in Admiral Morrison's expression. There had been no anger or disappointment in the human's eyes. Instead, there had been something that looked almost like relief. Now, as emergency reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy, Chairman Vextar began to understand what that expression had meant. The humans had not been asking for permission to become equals. They had been giving the Council one last chance to treat them fairly before they chose a different path entirely. Captain Lisa Palmer stood on the bridge of the civilian transport ship New Haven and watched as Earth's bright yellow sun grew larger in the main viewing screen. Around her ship, thousands of other human vessels moved through space in the largest migration that the galaxy had ever seen. The Exodus fleet stretched for millions of kilometers in every direction, carrying every human who had lived and worked in alien territory for the past 300 years. Lisa had spent her entire adult life working on mining stations in the Outer Rim territories. She had never seen Earth except in pictures and videos, but now she was finally going home. Behind her, the planets and space stations where humans had labored for generations were growing smaller and more distant with each passing hour. Navigation. Officer Ben Carter looked up from his control panel and gave Lisa the final numbers that she had been waiting to hear. "All transport ships have reported in, Captain," he said. "We have 2.8 million humans accounted for across 10,347 vessels. Every human settlement in galactic territory has been completely evacuated. The evacuation had taken exactly 4 months to complete, and it had been planned down to the smallest detail. The humans had not destroyed anything or taken anything. That did not belong to them. They had simply gathered their personal belongings and left. But they had also taken something else with them that the aliens had never expected to lose." On mining station Kepler 7, Chief Engineer Amy Torres had supervised the removal of the quantum drilling equipment that her team had designed and built over the past 20 years. The massive machines that could extract rare metals from asteroid cores were loaded onto transport ships piece by piece. The aliens who had profited from the mining operation watched in confusion as the equipment disappeared. "You cannot take that machinery," Station Commander Vorthak had protested. "It belongs to the Kepler Mining Consortium." Amy had shown him the detailed ownership records that proved every piece of equipment had been designed, built, and maintained by human workers using human knowledge and human materials. "You own the mining rights to this asteroid," she had explained patiently, "but we own the tools that make mining possible. Without our equipment and our knowledge, this station produces nothing." Similar scenes had played out on hundreds of worlds and space stations across the galaxy. Human agricultural specialists took their genetically modified seeds and their soil treatment chemicals when they left the farming worlds. Human engineers removed the computer programs and technical manuals that they had created to operate alien machinery. Human doctors and scientists took their research data and their medical supplies when they evacuated the hospital stations. The aliens had always assumed that the equipment and knowledge that humans used belonged to the galactic community as a whole. They had never bothered to check the legal documents that clearly stated otherwise. For 3 centuries, humans had been careful to maintain ownership of anything they created, even while working under alien supervision. Dr. Susan Blake had been the chief xenobiologist for the Altarian Agricultural Authority for over 30 years. She had developed the genetic modifications that allowed Earth crops to grow in alien soil and atmosphere conditions. When she left Altair 4, she took with her all the genetic codes and breeding programs that made large-scale agriculture possible on that world. The Altarian officials had tried to stop her from taking what they considered to be shared scientific knowledge. These genetic modifications were developed using Altarian resources, they had argued. They belong to our people now. Dr. Blake had calmly explained that the genetic modifications were based on human DNA analysis and human agricultural techniques that the Altarians had never learned to understand. You provided the land and the basic equipment, she had said, but the knowledge that makes your farms productive came from human science. We're not taking your property. We're taking our own expertise home with us. The most shocking discoveries came when alien supervisors tried to operate the equipment and facilities that humans had abandoned. On Titan Station, the massive food processing center that supplied protein rations to 12 billion aliens suddenly stopped working 3 days after the human workers left. The alien technicians who tried to restart the machines found that every control panel was labeled in human languages, and every technical manual was written using human scientific concepts that had no equivalent in alien languages. Governor Telthak of the Xerian system sent an urgent message to the Galactic Council, asking for help with the quantum refrigeration units that preserved food for his entire sector. The human maintenance crews had left detailed instruction manuals behind, but the manuals were completely useless to alien technicians who had never learned the basic principles of quantum mechanics that humans used in their engineering. Humans always made this work look simple, Governor Telthak complained to his advisors. They never told us how complicated these systems actually are. The truth was that humans had tried many times to teach alien workers how to maintain and operate the equipment. But the aliens had always been too proud to learn from a species they considered inferior. They had preferred to let humans do all the difficult work while they focused on what they saw as more important matters like politics and trade negotiations. Captain Rick Santos had been the chief maintenance engineer for Defense Platform Omega-9, the most important military base in the Outer Territories. When he left, he took with him the computer codes that controlled the station's life support systems, artificial gravity generators, and defensive weapons. The alien military officers, who remained behind, discovered that they had no idea how to operate their own base without human technical support. 3 months after the last human transport ship had disappeared into deep space, the first major system failures began to appear across the galaxy. The problems started small with minor equipment malfunctions and strange warning lights that no one understood. Within weeks, these small problems had grown into catastrophic breakdowns that threatened the survival of entire civilizations. On Xerion Prime, the central food distribution center that fed the home worlds of the Xerion Empire, suddenly experienced a complete system failure. The quantum refrigeration units that had preserved billions of tons of food for over 50 years began to overheat without warning. Emergency alarms echoed through the massive facility as temperatures inside the storage chambers started rising. Rapidly, Governor Telthak rushed to the distribution center with his best alien technicians and engineers. They stood helplessly in front of control panels covered with blinking red lights and error messages written in human languages. The technical manuals that the human workers had left behind might as well have been written in code for all the good they did. "How do we stop the overheating?" Governor Telthak demanded of his chief engineer. Engineer Vostok looked at the human-designed control systems with growing panic. "The manuals say we need to adjust the quantum field generators, but I do not understand what that means," he admitted. The humans never explained how these machines actually work. For 3 days, the alien technicians tried everything they could think of to fix the refrigeration systems. They pressed buttons at random and tried to follow the instruction manuals, using translation software that could not handle the technical vocabulary. Nothing worked. The temperature inside the storage chambers continued to rise until all the food began to spoil. 12 billion aliens in the Xerion system faced starvation because their leaders had never bothered to learn how their own food preservation systems worked. Similar disasters were happening on worlds across the galaxy as human-maintained equipment failed without proper technical support. Council Defense Minister Krondal received emergency reports from military bases throughout galactic space. Starbase. Alpha 7 had lost artificial gravity when its gravity generators shut down unexpectedly. Space Station Gamma 3 was evacuating all personnel because its life support systems were producing toxic gases instead of breathable air. Defense Platform Beta 5 had gone completely dark when its main power grid collapsed. The military bases that had operated perfectly for decades were suddenly becoming death traps for their alien crews. Equipment that had never malfunctioned before was breaking down in ways that the alien technicians had never seen. Repair crews stood helplessly in front of machines they could not understand, watching critical systems fail one by one. Commander Yisk Ara of Military Outpost Delta 9 sent an urgent distress call to Fleet Headquarters. Life support failure in DT. Progress, he reported. Oxygen production has dropped to 40% of normal levels and continues to fall. Request immediate evacuation of all personnel. The outpost that housed 8,000 alien military personnel had to be abandoned completely when the atmosphere processing systems stopped working. The human maintenance crews who had kept those systems running for over a century were gone, and no one else knew how to fix them. Dr. Rachel Brooks had warned the Galactic Council that this would happen. In her final report before leaving with the Human Exodus Fleet, she had tried to explain how dependent alien civilization had become on human technical knowledge. "You have built your entire society on infrastructure that only we understand," she had written. "When we leave, that infrastructure will begin to fail because you never learned to maintain it yourselves." The Council had dismissed her warnings as desperate threats from a species that was trying to make itself seem more important than it really was. They had assumed that their own technicians and engineers were smart enough to figure out how human equipment worked. They had been catastrophically wrong. Agricultural worlds that had fed billions of aliens for generations suddenly found themselves unable to grow enough food to feed their own populations. The genetic modifications that made Earth crops grow in alien soil required constant monitoring and adjustment that only human scientists understood. Without proper maintenance, the modified plants began to produce smaller harvests or stopped growing entirely. On the planet Kepler 9, the vast wheat fields that had supplied grain to 6 different star systems turned brown and died when the soil treatment systems failed. The human agricultural engineers who had designed those systems had taken their knowledge with them when they left. The alien farmers who remained behind could only watch helplessly as their crops withered in the fields. Transportation networks that connected hundreds of worlds began to break down as navigation systems and traffic control computers stopped working properly. Human technicians had written the software programs that guided cargo ships safely between star systems. Without regular updates and maintenance from human programmers, the navigation systems began to give incorrect coordinates that sent ships off course or caused collisions in busy shipping lanes. The Galactic Trade Commission reported that cargo shipments between major worlds had decreased by 70% as transport companies refused to risk their ships on unreliable navigation systems. Goods that had moved freely across the galaxy for centuries suddenly became rare and expensive as the transportation infrastructure collapsed. Industrial manufacturing centers that produced everything from clothing to starship components shut down when their automated production lines stopped working. The computer programs that controlled the manufacturing robots had been written by human programmers using logic systems that alien technicians could not understand. Without human maintenance, the robots began making defective products or stopped working entirely. The Vorthak Industrial Consortium, which manufactured weapons and equipment for the galactic military, was forced to close 12 major production facilities when their automated assembly systems failed. The sophisticated robots that had produced millions of items per day suddenly became useless scrap metal that no one knew how to repair. 6 months after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council faced the complete collapse of their civilization. Emergency meetings were held every day as reports of system failures and social unrest poured in from across their territory. Food riots had broken out on 17 worlds as agricultural systems failed and cargo shipments stopped arriving. Space stations were being evacuated as life support systems broke down. The mighty empire that had ruled for over 1,000 years was falling apart without the humans they had taken for granted. Chairman Vextar called an emergency session of the full council as the crisis reached critical levels. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Chamber, but their usual confidence and arrogance had been replaced by fear and desperation. The reality of their situation was impossible to ignore any longer. "We must contact the humans immediately," insisted Council Member Thisara, her voice shaking with emotion. "We must offer them whatever they want to return and help us fix these problems." Several other council members voiced their agreement, but Defense Minister Krondal slammed his massive fist on the table and roared his opposition. "We do not negotiate with deserters and traitors," he declared. "The humans abandoned their legal obligations to serve the Council. They must be forced to return and fulfill their contracts." Krondal's supporters argued that showing weakness by begging the humans to return would damage the Council's authority over other species. If humanity was allowed to break their agreements and leave without consequences, other species might try to do the same thing. The Council's power over the galaxy depended on maintaining the belief that their authority could not be challenged. "Send the fleet," Krondal commanded. "Bring the humans back by force if necessary." Chairman Vextar reluctantly agreed to authorize military action against humanity. The Galactic Defense Fleet was assembled under the command of Admiral Zekthar of the Draconian Empire. 700 warships from 12 different species formed the largest military force that the galaxy had ever seen. The fleet included massive battleships with planet-destroying weapons, fast attack cruisers with advanced targeting systems, and carrier ships loaded with thousands of fighter craft. Admiral Zekthar was confident that the humans would surrender as soon as they saw the overwhelming force arrayed against them. Humanity had never shown any interest in military conquest or aggressive warfare. They had always preferred to work and build rather than fight. Their ships were designed for cargo transport and mining operations, not combat. Against the advanced weapons of the Galactic Fleet, human resistance would be brief and futile. The fleet reached the edge of human territory after a 2-week journey through hyperspace. Long-range sensors detected human settlements on dozens of worlds and thousands of ships moving between star systems. The humans appeared to be building new cities and establishing colonies throughout their territory, as if they planned to stay permanently separated from galactic civilization. Admiral Zekthar opened communications with the lead human defense platform that guarded the border of human space. The platform was much larger than expected, but it appeared to be lightly armed compared to galactic military standards. The Admiral expected the conversation to be brief and one-sided. Captain Rick Santos answered the communication request from his command center aboard the defense platform Defiance. His voice was calm and professional as he spoke to the alien fleet commander. "Admiral Zekthar, you are entering human sovereign space without permission. Turn your fleet around and return to galactic territory immediately." Admiral Zekthar laughed at what he saw as a pathetic attempt at intimidation. "Captain Santos, you are addressing the commander of the Galactic Defense Fleet. You will surrender your vessels immediately and prepare to be escorted back to Council territory. Resistance is futile and will only result in unnecessary casualties." "Captain..." Santos was quiet for a moment before responding. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of sadness that Admiral Zekthar did not understand. "Admiral, you have made a serious mistake. You assume that we are the same people who left galactic territory 6 months ago. You assume that we have spent 3 centuries working for you without learning anything from the experience. You are wrong on both counts. What happened next shocked every species in the galaxy and changed the balance of power forever. the human defense platform did not surrender or attempt to negotiate. Instead, it opened fire with weapons that no one had ever seen before. Beams of energy that moved faster than light itself struck the Galactic Fleet's lead battleships and cut through their shields like they were made of paper. The alien warships that had seemed invincible moments before began exploding in brilliant flashes of light. Their advanced armor and defensive systems provided no protection against human weapons that used principles of physics that galactic science had never discovered. In the first 30 seconds of combat, Admiral Zekthar lost 12 of his most powerful battleships. Captain Helen Davis led a squadron of human fighter craft in an attack run against the Galactic Fleet's carrier ships. Her small ship moved with impossible speed and agility, dodging enemy fire while delivering precise strikes that disabled entire enemy squadrons. The fighters that launched from her ship were unlike anything in galactic military design, using technology that seemed to violate the known laws of physics. The battle that Admiral Zekthar had expected to win in minutes turned into a complete disaster for the Galactic Fleet. Human ships appeared from seemingly empty space using stealth technology that made them invisible to alien sensors. Human weapons struck targets from distances that should have been impossible to achieve. Human tactics seemed to anticipate every move that the alien commanders made. For 3 hours, the pride of the galactic military was systematically destroyed by an enemy they had underestimated completely. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were reduced to drifting wreckage by weapons they could not understand or defend against. Crews that had never known defeat found themselves helplessly outmatched by opponents they had dismissed as inferior. The destruction of the Galactic Defense Fleet sent shockwaves across every inhabited world in the galaxy. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the Council's military had been completely defeated by an enemy force. The news spread quickly through communication networks as the surviving ships limped back to their home bases with reports that seemed impossible to believe. Of the 700 warships that had entered human space, only 48 had escaped destruction. The crews who returned told stories of human weapons that defied galactic understanding of physics and tactics that seemed to predict enemy movements before they were made. The humans had not just fought back against superior numbers and firepower, they had won decisively using technology that made galactic military science look primitive. Emergency sessions of the Galactic Council were held every day as member species demanded explanations for the catastrophic defeat. How had the humans developed such advanced weapons in secret? Why had galactic intelligence agencies never detected signs of human military buildup? Most importantly, what did this defeat mean for the future of galactic civilization? Intelligence. Reports from the surviving fleet painted a disturbing picture of human capabilities that no one had suspected. Commander Frank Miller, who had worked as a mining engineer on asteroid station Beta 9 for over 20 years, was now revealed to be a strategic military planner for the human defense forces. His message to the Galactic Council was broadcast on all communication frequencies where every citizen could hear it. For 300 years, you treated us like useful animals who could do dangerous work that you were too proud to do yourselves, Commander Miller said in his calm, measured voice. You thought we were learning nothing during those centuries except how to follow your orders and maintain your equipment. You were wrong about everything. The message continued with revelations that shattered every assumption the Council had made about human intelligence and capabilities. While humans had appeared to be simple workers and technicians, they had actually been conducting the most comprehensive study of galactic civilization that had ever been attempted. Every human who worked on an alien world or space station had been gathering information about alien technology, culture, and military capabilities. Dr. Kevin White, who had been the chief maintenance engineer for the central power grid on Altair 4, revealed the true scope of human scientific advancement. During his 30 years of maintaining alien power systems, he had been secretly developing improved versions of every technology he encountered. The quantum reactors that powered galactic Civilization were primitive compared to the fusion systems that humans had built in their hidden research facilities. "We did not just maintain your machines," Dr. White explained in a broadcast that reached every corner of the galaxy. "We studied them, improved them, and built better versions using principles that your scientists never discovered. While you believed you were our technological superiors, we were actually centuries ahead of you in almost every field of science. The evidence of human technological superiority was overwhelming and undeniable. The weapons that had destroyed the galactic fleet used energy sources that could power entire star systems for thousands of years. The ships that had defeated galactic forces moved using propulsion systems that could cross the galaxy in weeks rather than months. The computers that guided human operations processed information faster than entire galactic research networks. But the most shocking revelation came from Captain Maria Lopez, who had worked as a civilian transport pilot for the Galactic Trade Commission before the Exodus. She revealed that humans had not just been developing better technology during their centuries of service to the Council. They had been carefully documenting every weakness and vulnerability in galactic civilization. "You made us build and maintain everything that kept your society functioning," Captain Lopez said in her broadcast to the Council. "We know exactly how every system works because we designed most of them ourselves. We know where every critical facility is located because we built them. We know how to shut down your entire civilization because we are the ones who have been holding it together." The implications of this revelation were terrifying for the Council and its member species. Humans had not just been workers and technicians, they had been intelligence agents gathering information about every aspect of galactic society. They knew the location of every military base, the design of every defensive system, and the weaknesses of every major installation. During their years of service, humans had also been building their own civilization in secret. While they worked openly on galactic projects, they had been using their advanced technology to establish hidden colonies in unexplored regions of space. The territory that humans now controlled was much larger than anyone had realized, with cities and installations that were invisible to galactic sensors. Dr. Angela Ross, who had been the head librarian for the Galactic Historical Archive, revealed that humans had been secretly copying and storing every piece of scientific and cultural knowledge in galactic civilization. The humans now possessed complete records of every major scientific discovery, every technological innovation, and every cultural achievement of all 47 Council species. "We have learned everything you know and developed improvements for. Most of it," Dr. Ross explained. "But you have learned almost nothing about us because you never thought we were worth studying. You treated us like tools rather than intelligent beings, so you never tried to understand how our minds work or what we were capable of achieving." The final revelation came from Admiral Jack Morrison himself, speaking from the flagship of the human fleet. He explained that the human exodus had not been a desperate escape from galactic oppression. It had been a carefully planned transition to independence that had been in development for over 50 years. "We offered you partnership and equality many times over the past decades," Admiral Morrison said. "Each time you refused, we continued preparing for the day when we would no longer need your approval to determine our own future. That day has finally arrived." The Council members who listened to these broadcasts realized that they had been living in a carefully maintained illusion for centuries. They had believed themselves to be the masters of galactic civilization, but they had actually been dependent on the intelligence and capabilities of the species they had considered inferior. Without human knowledge and human technology, their empire was not just failing, but had never been truly functional in the first place. 1 year after the human exodus began, the Galactic Council's empire lay in complete ruins. 47 different species that had once ruled hundreds of worlds now struggled to survive as their basic infrastructure continued to collapse around them. Food shortages had led to civil wars on dozens of planets as governments lost control over their starving populations. Transportation networks had broken down completely, leaving entire star systems isolated and cut off from outside help. Chairman Vexitar sat alone in the empty council chamber, staring at reports that detailed the complete breakdown of galactic civilization. His empire had shrunk from hundreds of worlds to just a few dozen that still maintained basic life support systems. Most of the council members had returned to their home worlds to deal with local crises, abandoning any pretense of galactic government. The chairman had lost most of his political authority as member species blamed the council's arrogance for the catastrophic situation they now faced. Popular uprisings had overthrown governments on 17 worlds, as citizens demanded new leaders who might be able to find solutions to the crisis. The mighty Galactic Council that had ruled for over a millennium was now seen as a failed institution that had led their civilization to disaster. In a final desperate attempt to save what remained of their empire, Chairman Vexitar authorized one last diplomatic mission to human territory. The message he sent to Admiral Morrison contained offers that would have been unthinkable just 2 years earlier. Humanity would be granted full voting rights in the Council with representation, equal to their contributions to galactic society. Human territories would be recognized as sovereign and independent with no interference from galactic authorities. Human citizens would receive full equality under galactic law with compensation for centuries of unfair treatment. The chairman's message also included a personal plea that revealed how completely the balance of power had shifted. "We understand now that we made terrible mistakes in our treatment of your people," he admitted. "We offer these terms not as your superiors trying to be generous, but as equals asking for your help in a time of desperate need." Admiral Morrison's response came 3 days later, delivered by Captain Steve Patterson from the bridge of humanity's new flagship, the Independent Spirit. The captain's message was brief and delivered in the same calm, professional tone that humans had always used when speaking to galactic authorities. "Chairman Vexitar, your offer has been received and carefully considered by the human colonial assembly," Captain Patterson said. "After extensive debate and consultation with our citizens, we have decided to respectfully decline your proposal for renewed cooperation between our civilizations." The rejection was polite but absolute, delivered without anger or hostility, but with a finality that made clear no further negotiations would be possible. Captain Patterson continued with an explanation that revealed how completely humanity had moved beyond the need for galactic approval or partnership. "The Human Colonial Assembly has voted to pursue an independent path among the stars," he said. "We have established diplomatic and trade relationships with several younger species that share our values of cooperation and mutual respect. Our colonies are thriving, and our technology continues to advance. We have no desire to return to a subordinate role in galactic society." The message included a detailed report of human achievements during their year of independence that demonstrated just how far they had progressed beyond galactic civilization. Human colonies had been established on over 200 worlds, using terraforming technology that could make any planet suitable for life within months rather than centuries. Human ships now traveled between star systems using faster-than-light drives that made galactic transportation networks look primitive. Dr. Angela Ross, speaking from the first university established in human territory, delivered the scientific community's assessment of galactic civilization. "Your technology has remained essentially unchanged for the past 500 years, she said. "You became comfortable with human maintenance of your systems and stopped trying to develop improvements or innovations. While you stagnated, we continued learning and growing. The human university had already made scientific discoveries that surpassed anything achieved by galactic research institutions. Human scientists had developed medical treatments that could extend lifespans indefinitely and energy sources that could power entire civilizations without depleting natural resources. Human engineers had built cities that existed in harmony with their natural environments and manufacturing systems that produced no waste or pollution. But perhaps the most significant development was humanity's relationship with other species in the galaxy. While the Council struggled to maintain control over their remaining territories, Humans had been forming alliances with younger civilizations that had grown tired of galactic authority. The Kepler Federation, the Centauri Alliance, and the Free Worlds Coalition had all chosen to follow humanity's example by withdrawing from council control and establishing their own independent governments. Captain Lisa Palmer, now serving as humanity's ambassador to the Free Worlds Coalition, explained the new political reality that was emerging across the galaxy. The old model of galactic government based on domination and hierarchy is being replaced by voluntary associations of equal partners, she said. Species that choose cooperation over coercion are building a new kind of civilization that benefits everyone involved. The Council's remaining member species watched helplessly as their former subjects formed new alliances that excluded galactic authority entirely. Trade agreements were signed between human colonies and independent worlds that bypassed galactic economic systems. Military defense pacts were established that provided protection without requiring submission to council control. Cultural exchange programs were created that allowed different species to learn from each other as equals rather than as superiors and subordinates. Chairman Vextar realized that the galaxy had moved beyond the need for the kind of government that the Council represented. The age of centralized authority maintained through force and intimidation was ending, replaced by networks of cooperation between free and independent civilizations. In his final official act as chairman, Vextar dissolved the Galactic Council and released all remaining member species from their obligations to galactic authority. Some species chose to join the new alliances that humans had helped create, while others decided to pursue complete isolation until they could rebuild their societies. The lights went out in the Great Council chamber for the last time as chairman. Vextar left the building that had once been the center of galactic power. Outside, the city that had housed the government of hundreds of worlds was being abandoned as alien citizens fled to their home systems. The empire that had seemed eternal had collapsed not through conquest or revolution, but simply because the people who had kept it functioning decided they no longer needed to serve masters who refused to treat them as equals.